Welcome to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women that replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women in the United States, according to the CDC and NIH. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, or stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, and hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. Freeman, and you'll hear me interview other sisters in loss from around the world who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Storytelling is powerful. Storytelling is activism. Storytelling is healing. Now let's get started. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes, well, I'm Tabitha, and I like to say in my day job, I work for the government, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that, and I handle kind of very sensitive cases. But on a more personal level, like what I do, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm the oldest of 7, so I come from a big Caribbean family. And I like to kind of read, write, and dabble in anything that's like creative and artistic in my spare time. And so people who know me outside of my work know that I'm kind of like a creative thinker, and I'm always up to meet up with someone and listen to their story and just be a sounding board for them. And so that's just kind of a little bit of who I am as a person.
I love it. I love it. And I would love for you to hear your story and your journey to motherhood. So, can you share with us your lost story?
Yes. So it happened back in 2023. I'm almost a couple years removed from it, but it's obviously made a lasting impact my life. I mentioned earlier, I'm like the oldest of 7. I was the first one to get pregnant with what would been like the first grandchild on my side of the family, but also my husband's side of the family. He's also the oldest of 7. So imagine big family, everyone's excited for this journey. And coming from such a big family, neither of our mothers had complicated pregnancies or losses. And so we didn't expect anything to go wrong. Um, and I think that sometimes is the mindset, right? Like you're positive, but you just don't expect anything to happen until it happens. And so the pregnancy went as I would say, like typical as you'd expect. We found out we were pregnant. We waited closer to the 12 weeks, told family, told friends. I was pretty active before my pregnancy, remained active during the pregnancy, and everything changed when we went in for our anatomy scan. So, roughly around 20 weeks at that scan, baby looked great, but I was told that like my cervix was a lot shorter than where they would have liked it to be for the anatomy scan. And so we didn't know what that meant. We had no knowledge before, but in a nutshell, they wanted to monitor the pregnancy. They sent me home, put in a referral for me to meet with a maternal fetal medicine doctor, high risk doctor, to see if I was potentially a candidate for a stitch, because that's usually the recommendation if your cervix is starting to shorten or weaken. Between the time that we left the OB's office and was scheduled to meet with the MFM, my water broke. And so it was 3 days after my anatomy scan and probably a few days before we were going to meet with the MFM. And my water broke. I did not go into labor, surprisingly. And I stayed pregnant for 6 more weeks. Yes, it like everyone was shocked because when we went to the hospital that night that I my water broke, my OB team basically like warned me of everything. And I live in Georgia, so there's some restrictions regarding where I was at in my pregnancy, but like I I was like 20 and like 4 days, and she was just like, "Hey, usually people whose water break goes into labor within the first 72 hours. And if they don't, they go into labor within the first week. And if you go into labor, there's nothing we can do. Like you're in a period where the baby like is not viable. There's science has not caught up to it at that stage. It's still too underdeveloped. But also like we're in Georgia, so you don't really have many options other than kind of wait it out. And, we were devastated. We were like, what the heck? Like, why, how are we here? Why don't we have options? Anyway, I was hospitalized, did not go into labor. After the 72 hours, they discharged me and basically said, if you could stay pregnant for a couple more weeks, then you have options. I went home. I was bed rested for about 2 weeks. We checked ourselves in to the hospital closer to almost like 24 weeks, because 24 weeks they can intervene if the parents choose to around that time frame depending on the state you live in. And so we checked in and I was in the hospital for about a month, confined mostly to my hospital room. Only could get up to like go to the bathroom, maybe stretch, walk around. Toward the ends of that like period I was in the hospital, I did get a little more privileges to go outside, like wheeled with it within a wheelchair. But I remained pregnant for a total of almost 6 weeks, and then I delivered at about 26 weeks and 2 days gestational age. But remember, I my water ruptured at 20 weeks, so I came a long way. Doctors were really optimistic. They usually say get to that 24, 25 week, 28 weeks would be better because you're closer to the third trimester. But like we have good improvements for around 26 weeks. So we're really excited, even though we were in a tough position. Unfortunately, our daughter, Gabriela, contracted a rare intestinal disease while in the NICU. And she contracted NEC, which is short for necrotizing enterocolitis, and it's a intestinal disease that occurs in preemie babies. It's actually the leading cause of death for preemie babies. And she contracted it, and within like 24 hours of when they actually diagnosed the disease and realized that it was, she passed. There was NEC usually takes like two forms, we like to say. It can take a slower form where they can treat it with medicine and antibiotics, or it takes a really rapid form and it develops so quickly that medicine's not able to kind of help the situation, and then the baby would need surgery. However, when they go in for the surgery to see if there's any like dead tissue they can remove to keep the baby alive, the sometimes the disease spreads too fast that there's nothing left to save, essentially. And so that's what happened with Gabriella. By the time they diagnosed it, transferred her to a hospital for an exploratory surgery to see if they could remove the infected tissue, it had spread and infected majority of her intestinal tissue. And so they basically said, like, even if we did the surgery, we're not sure she'll survive the surgery, and even if she survives the surgery, she won't really have a quality of life. And so yeah, she passed about a week after she was born. And so what I'm sure one can imagine was so devastating about everything is that we grieved in two periods. We grieved when we learned about my cervix and my water rupturing and my water rupturing, and them telling us like, yeah, you're going to deliver, there's nothing we can do. And then we got hope, and then we grieved again when she actually passed after everything. And so yeah, that was me and my husband's experience with our first pregnancy, our first baby, the first grandchild of our family.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that and sharing how different the diagnoses could be with NAC, because I don't know if I've heard it broken down that way. And I'm happy that you shared that because I think that people don't know. I think people, when they think of the NICU, they think of like babies who have jaundice or are overweight, like, or really sick babies who have like other abnormalities outside of babies who are born preterm, right? Who have other issues that could come up within the NICU. So I'm happy that you shared that. I would love for you to share more about the journey afterwards. So, like, after she passed away, what type of wraparound care that they give you at the hospital? What did your family support look like? Did you all have a memorial for her? How was that process?
Yeah, I, it was complicated, and the reason I say that is because most of the time that Gabriella was in a NICU care was at a different hospital. Like that was the main hospital we formed relationships with, but she didn't pass at that hospital. She didn't die there. She got transferred to another local hospital that really specialized in these type of surgeries, and that's where she passed. And so we didn't have the relationship with the hospital or the people there that we did before. And so I always tell people I felt like we fell in the gap. Like there was a gap between the services provided from that hospital for us. They were really great and not pushing us to like make a decision regarding what we wanted to do with her. They gave us time, so I was really appreciative of that. But I remember I had to like reach out to them after a few weeks to be like, do you have support groups? Do you have resources that could be helpful? And they did. They did send me an email with a list of organizations that I did further research on. But I just felt like that shouldn't have been my place. Like I shouldn't have had to reach out for that. They should have had something in place where they could have given a list of resources. However, with what they sent me and the next society, learning more about the disease, I came across different loss organizations and support groups. And so I actually came across your podcast. I was really looking to relate to um, stories from women of color because I kept coming across stories who they did experience loss, and it doesn't minimize in any way, but they weren't from women of color, and sometimes there's just different experiences that we can relate to that they weren't able to. And so I remember going like deep dive, listening to a few of your episodes, finding ones on like cervical insufficiency, and that really helped me get a better understanding of like what caused my situation. But between that, there were some um, like loss support groups through another hospital, one we weren't affiliated with, where they had group sessions like once a month. Everybody could come on and talk about their loss. My husband and I did that together. I had been in therapy before my loss, but then continued in individual therapy myself and spent time processing that. Um, and so I did that. The podcast, I was given book resources. And so one that really helped um, is a book called Grieving the Child I Never Knew. And it is faith based. And I always tell people that because depending on your experience, or depending on where you're at with your faith, or if you're a believer at all, like that can touch on in different ways. And for me, it felt low pressure. Like I could take what I want with it every day. And just if today I felt like it, I could write a prompt or talk about how I'm feeling and maybe read a scripture. If I didn't feel like it, then I just kind of skipped it. So that was really helpful in the support. We did have a memorial, but with just family. Unfortunately, because she passed so quickly after the NICU, only family was able to visit her. And I think we had one friend that actually got to see her. We ended up not, I would say maybe like non-traditional. I'm a big proponent of you got to do what's right for you and your family. So what we did was um, my husband and I spent time at the funeral home with her after she had passed. And the funeral home was really great and just giving us that time unrushed, especially because for parents who have babies in the NICUs, they're usually tied to wires or have things on their face and mask. And so it was really nice to have that time without all of the equipment with her and just take as long as we needed with her. So we my husband and I did that on our own. As far as the family, we put together like a recap of our journey, like the pregnancy journey with her, all the different months. We put together like the photos we did have from the NICU and the videos when we found out about her gender, because we did like a video reveal from the hospital. So we did a big slideshow presentation of everything all along her journey up until the very end. We held it at our home, did it, made that presentation for our family, showed it to them. And then the way we like memorialized her was that we actually planted a flower together. So like we got a pot, we picked a flower that represented her birth month, and then every family member got to take part in it. They either could put the dirt in or kind of like, put a little bit of like the roots or just like hold the pot, whatever they felt comfortable. And so that was kind of like the way we chose to honor her with our family.
I love that. I love that. I just did a solo episode where I was talking about I'm writing a book, and I've been talking a lot about healing archetypes and how a lot of us fit into these modes that are very direct and indirect of some of the Black women tropes that they give us, particularly this strong Black woman trope. And this ancestral anchor is what I'm calling this healing archetype, is essentially what you just described of being grounded in spirit, using rituals, using plants and herbs to memorialize and symbolize and honor our babies. So I love that you and your family thought to do that. Like, I don't know if that's a cultural thing for you all or if that was just something you thought of, but it's very what that is. Like, it's very much so into ensuring that everyone can be grounded and we get to watch something grow, obviously in the physical since she's not here. It's like, almost taking that same place. So I love that you all did that. And it was a way of honoring her, you all seeing this plant grow, but also bringing your family in to know that she existed, right? Because they probably weren't able to see her in the physical, especially in the NICU, in that setting, particularly in that short week that she was still living and going through. And then, like you said, with all the tubes and everything around her, it's very hard to see a baby in the NICU like that. So I'm happy that you all were able to share in slideshow and in a flower format. So talk about your grieving process. Like, so after all that's said and done, you know how this is. Family's there for a period of time and then family leaves. And then it's just you with yourself and your thoughts, and then it's your husband with his thoughts, and then it's collectively y'all together as you grieve together. So share with us that process because I know it was a process to get to a place of saying, okay, I'm ready to try again. So take us on that journey.
Definitely a process, and it's still a process. I'll say that, right? Like I think sometimes people who don't have experiences with grief, they think it's like a period and then it ends, but no, it's always ongoing. But a funny story. Well, I don't know if it's funny. It was unexpected. We actually got pregnant shortly after our loss. So Gabriela passed on September 21st, 2023, and we got pregnant at like November of that year. So I mentioned that up front because it had a big part to deal with grief. um,
Hold on.
so
So
yeah.
you literally you only had one cycle, menstrual cycle that came back
Yes.
on?
And for those of you who are like, wait a minute, did she get it cleared with the doctors? I was cleared with
No,
the
no, no, you were
doctors. Like I
clear.
was
No, no,
good.
no.
Yeah.
We know you were clear. But I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, literally, you were like, you literally had one menstrual cycle, like one that came on before you started
Yes.
ovulating
Yes.
again, which is normal, but then it's not normal, like,
Yeah. And I say in our experience, like in well, in our defense, we didn't expect it because to get pregnant with Gabriella took some time. We
right.
didn't get pregnant right away.
Exactly. So I was like, hold on, this was God, because sis.
So, but it's made the grieving process honestly like complicated. So, my husband and I definitely grieved very differently. We both had to grieve. Like, what was helpful to our grief is like we wanted to start a platform to speak about Gabriella and everything we experienced because there was definitely a gap, and some of the situations we encountered were rare. So we decided as a team that we were going to start a foundation in her honor, but I that came with its own grief, and then also being pregnant again, because while my husband and I agreed that we would do this in honor of her, we operated very differently. My husband was not necessarily comfortable yet speaking about her, about our story publicly, but knew that kind of was what we needed if we wanted to help others in her situation or raise an awareness. I, on the other hand, was the opposite. I wanted to talk more about it her. I wanted to tell her story because I felt like the more vocal I could be about what we experienced, the more she stayed in our lives, the more everyone recognized her as someone who was here, even though it was a short period. So sometimes I could say my husband and I kind of butt heads on that and taking direction for the foundation because we were on opposite ends. And then I found support groups and hearing other people's stories helpful. And I wanted to connect with as many people who experience this type of loss. It may not be exactly how I did or we did, but they experienced the loss of a baby, or they experienced the loss of an infant, or during pregnancy, like could relate in some way. I wanted exposure to as many stories as possible. My husband was the opposite. Like, he was just like, I don't want every conversation to be with someone who's experienced. It's heavy for me. Like, it's a lot. And then I just feel like I'm always stuck in like this bubble of like grief, and it's really heavy. So that those were the different dynamics. And I will say it was a blessing. I think it was meant to be that our second daughter, Eliana, came unexpectedly right after, but it did complicate grief because we were still in the thick of grieving Gabriella and what life was supposed to look like. She was supposed to be born around Christmas, the holidays. And so we were looking to all that, or looking forward to all that, planning for that, and then we knew now we were pregnant with a second, or by the time the holidays came. So it complicated things for the grief journey, and honestly, still now she is about to be a year, Eliana, and I tell people, sometimes people have this misconception that like, oh, you have another child, it kind of helps or replaces, but it doesn't. It does not replace. And I'd like to tell people, like, if you had multiple children, I'd be like, choose which one you would like give up, right? Like, you're not going to choose which one, you want all of them there. So um, it it doesn't change things. If anything, it adds to it because you're reminded daily what you're missing, what you missed out on with your prior, or what you won't have, I shall say. And so I'm still in therapy, right? Like, I'm still working through my grief. It comes in waves. There are days where I feel like I'm more optimistic about my grief, and I get excited about the platform that we're trying to build to share her story and keep her in everyone's life. And then there are days where I'm like, why is that the way I have to do it to keep her as a part of our lives, right? Like, why is she just not here? And then everyone can see her for who she is. And so that's kind of like a short version.
Absolutely. Yes. All of the above. Yes, yes, yes. I would love for you to share more about this pregnancy after loss journey, particularly around how um, grief showed up for you at each stage of your pregnancy, especially when you got closer to the time that your water broke in your previous pregnancy, which I think you mentioned was around 20 weeks. So how was that journey with this new pregnancy you're in, with Eliana, up until you got to 20 weeks? Did you have a cerclage placed earlier? Like, how was did you see an MFM earlier? How was that part of this pregnancy after loss? Because I think when people think of cervical issues, changes, or even premature rupture of the membranes, a lot of that stuff doesn't get diagnosed until it happens. But there are preventative things that the doctors can do on the front end with monitoring us more closely before we get to that point, if that makes sense. So I would love for you to
100.
share more about that.
Yes, and I'm very vocal about advocating for yourself, especially when it comes to ultrasound. So my biggest complaint, I guess, with everything that happened with Gabriela is like I went so long in between ultrasounds. So I had an anatomy scan at 20, and I want to say the previous scan, ultrasound scan, was closer to that like 10, 12-ish week range. And since there had been no flags to look for in my history, there was no reason to do ultrasounds in between. However, and I know that's kind of, I'm going to get off my soapbox with that, but I know that's linked to like insurance and money and how that works, how routine is. But really, if we know that like by 20-ish weeks, the changes in the cervix is kind of like the like too late to like we're getting close to like a cerclage being placed, then you should be women should be empowered to advocate for more ultrasounds, despite what the doctors say, given either their history or just being proactive. So, second time around, I mean, I had my history to support me, so I know that's a little different. But second time around, I advocated for more ultrasounds. So my OB team was very, very supportive. And the minute we found out pregnant, I had ultrasound out probably every couple of weeks in the beginning, and then we ended up spacing them out to like 3, 4 weeks a month. Around the 10 to going on 11 weeks. I was in for an ultrasound and an exam. Ultrasound was fine, but I had made some complaints and wanted them to do a check to make sure everything was fine. They did a check and they had concerns based on what they saw that they thought I was potentially like dilating early. That was what the midwife had seen, and then an OB kind of potentially confirmed it. So they actually rushed me into the MFM the next morning. Like that was midday, and the next morning they called the MFM that they knew and they said, "Hey, this is her history. We want to get her right away. We're not going to wait. Can you examine her?" Because basically they're going to say, if you are dilating, like if the MFM confirms it, like essentially it's going to result in a miscarriage. There's not much that we can do. But if you're not, the MFM was going to consider placing a cerclage, and this is before 11 weeks. So for anyone who knows history of like cerclage, that's kind of early, really early, right? Most medical professionals don't want to place a cerclage until you're past that first trimester. So somewhere around the 13, 14 weeks. So we had a scare there. We went in and she's just like, "No, you're not dilating. And I don't see any type of bleeding. You're good." And she told me, and I thank her. I still need to go back and thank her and show her a picture of my second daughter, Eliana. But she said, she's like, "I'm going to tell you this. Like, I'm going against what science would say," right? She's just like, "We have this book," right? And all medical professionals like to follow the book and like to follow the statistics. But sometimes you have to kind of put the book to the side and evaluate that patient and her history and make a decision based on that. And she told me, she's just like, "With your permission, that's what I'd like to do. I am placing the cerclage early, and there is no guarantee that you potentially aren't miscarrying. And that may not happen. That may happen in the next few weeks. But on the chance that it doesn't, we're going to hope that the cerclage holds." So she placed it at like 10 weeks, and I think it was 5 or 6 days. We had the cerclage that day. We went in to see it, like put me on, did the cerclage. The cerclage held the whole way. And we all thought that I was scheduled to get my cerclage removed at like 36, 37 weeks. I chose to keep it as close to 37 as possible. So I want to say I did like 36 and 5. Everyone, even my medical team thought, "Oh, once the cerclage is removed, I am going to go into labor within a week." My baby girl, Eliana, actually did not even come until her due date at 40 weeks. So post cerclage, I still stayed pregnant for a couple of weeks, and I actually had to do like activities to get her moving. I had to like, put some things into motion because the girl was not coming.
Oh, she was
But
not, you weren't even dilating at all? Like,
no,
what?
no, no. And so, yes, like, we believe, so my God had his hand over all of it. Like I stand firm in that. But also I'm so grateful to the medical team for one, listening to me when I advocated for myself. When I said, I get what you're saying, but I want routine ultrasounds. I want multiple ones. Every time I had a concern or complaint, even if they're like, you're understanding your situation, you're doing a lot, but we're going to accommodate you. So I'm grateful for them to listen to me, but I advocated for myself. And same thing with the cerclage. I said, I know you guys like to wait till the first trimester is over with, but can you, if I'm okay with it, put it in? And they're like, yes, we can if everything checks out. And the fact that my MFM was willing to do that and I was willing to take that risk, I'm just so grateful because the cerclage held, and yeah, and then she didn't want to come till her due date. So
Oh man, such a good story. She's like, no,
yeah.
I'm staying in here. I need to grow a little more. I need to tell mom
Mm-hmm.
that I'm on my own time. I'm in control.
Mm-hmm. And I would have sworn, so she was born in August. I would have sworn she was going to be a July baby. Both my husband and I are born in July. So we're like, oh my gosh, we're going to have
We're gonna
another
have a whole
July
July
baby. It's going to
July
be all
plan.
around.
Yeah.
No, she said, I want my own month.
She
So,
said, I am going to be this Leo that I'm supposed to be.
yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love that part of your story. I'm happy that you advocated for yourself because like you said, um if I'm happy that the team listened to you because I know if they didn't, you would have went somewhere else. I've been like, let me go somewhere else and get another opinion because I know my body and I know the experience I had. So my question was this pregnancy after experiencing this loss and then going through that whole journey, was that healing for you? Or was it still very anxious and lots of worry and frustration during that pregnancy?
Yeah, I held my breath the entire pregnancy, if I'm being honest. It's not one of my most flattering traits, but I tend to be a little bit more of a worrier. I tend to prepare for the worst outcome. So having experienced what I would say is like the absolutely worst thing that you could experience, you just don't imagine it. Having experienced that, I was like, there's no telling that like I could not just go through that again, right? Like I was preparing like I was going to go through that. So I held my breath the entire pregnancy. And even when I said, oh, if I just got past the 20-week anatomy scan, right? Like when we did her anatomy scan, everything looked great. Um, and that the cerclage was holding. Like even when I got past that, I thought I would feel relief. I didn't. When I got past the 26 weeks and 2 days when Gabriela was born, or the 27 weeks and 2 days when she passed, even when I got past that, I thought I'd feel relief. No, there wasn't any relief until she was in my arms. And if I'm being honest, still I had to like hold my breath for a little bit after she was here, just be like, okay, she's staying with us, like, um it's not it's not like what I would, recommend, right? If you're a person who can like focus on the positive and like, I don't know, maybe not be as anxious, I think that's definitely the route to go. But it wasn't who I was. It wasn't how I got through the pregnancy. And we did things on our own terms. We still celebrated. We had a small intimate reveal with our family. We did do a baby shower with just really close family and a couple of friends who we considered family, like really, really near the end of the pregnancy when we felt comfortable. But yeah, I held my breath the entire time. So
No, I get it. And I think that's the reason why I asked because I think like you said, people think that once you have the baby or you're pregnant after a loss, that this all goes away, but it does not. It magnifies your grief and your anxiety that you were experiencing throughout that pregnancy is just that grief manifesting, right? Like it's just how it comes out in grief. And then even with this baby in your arms right now, it's like, all right, now I am parenting after loss, but I still am grieving this baby. I'm still grieving this experience that I did not have with this other child. And I think of the future, right? These expectations of what would life have been like with two babies, right? And, in the future, if I have more children, what would life be like with two babies and this baby in heaven? Like it's just, it never ends for us as grievers, as folks that are on this healing journey. So I would love for you to share kind of like where you are now, because parenting after loss is another obstacle to overcome. Like, how has that process been since we have this baby? She's here, she's living, turning one, about to be one, or just crossed one. Like, how has that process been for you?
We're still navigating and it's difficult. We are very intentional of including Gabriela in our family, even though she's not here and she's in heaven, with Eliana. So even though Eliana can't fully understand things now, we do talk to her about Gabriela. And so we do refer to Eliana as the little sister if it's ever comes up in discussion. And we're very, very intentional about that. Now, when we're out in public and, I'm with Eliana or my husband and we get asked the question about like, oh, is this your only child? Or do you have siblings? Depending on the day, depending on what the environment we're in and who the person is, like that answer looks different. It's whatever feels comfortable to us. But with our family, friends, we're very intentional about still including Gabrielle as part of our family. And then I always like to say, like, the foundation we started is our way to parent Gabriella. So we parent Gabriella and Eliana differently. We started the Gabriela Grace Foundation to honor Gabriella and raise awareness to these issues. And we look at it as parenting her, even though she's not here. It's like our way to be a parent to her and it was in some way, even though she's in heaven. And then Eliana, we parent her here, trying our best to navigate parenthood, but we also include her in the foundation. And when we talk about Eliana, we, like I said, refer to her as her little sister. And so it's tough because we do always imagine like we had another girl, but we're like, what would our life been like with two girls here? And I refer to myself as a girl mom, and my husband refers to himself as a girl dad, and we encompass the fact that we had two girls. But it's hard, and it definitely makes us appreciate more. I think we are very like loving and affectionate with Eliana, and we just, even the hard moments, the tough nights, and they've been tough, like when you're not getting any sleep, you're just overwhelmed, even all of that, like sometimes I know that I find myself just in tears, just grateful that she is here with us, because I know in some way she could not have been, right? Like there was no guarantee that we were going to have her here with us. So I'm grateful for that, but I'm also then reminded about like, oh my gosh, what would life would have been like with two little girls running around. So it's
Yeah,
day by day. That's
day
that's
by
what
day.
parenthood is.
That is the complicated grief of parenting after loss for sure. I would love for you to talk more about the foundation. I mean, like for you to even think about, like, look, this is how we're grieving. I want to start a foundation. Like, who says that after babies like I want to start a foundation in order to honor my daughter.
Yeah.
Like it's such a blessing to even think of like this is a way, like you said, of parenting her. But I like to think of like this is your way of living out her memory, right? Like by being a witness to her, but also wanting to serve other families in this way. So I would love to know about what support services that you all are offering with Gabriela Grace Foundation.
Thank you. Thank you honestly for asking me about that, because um it came up organically in the sense like it was a promise that both my husband and I made to Gabriella, and we never talked about it, but like I think we both individually made the promise to her that like people are going to know about your story. People are going to know you were here. People are going to know about the impact you made, and we're going to help others in similar situations. I think both my husband and I came to that individually because it wasn't after like the initial shock and everything, a few weeks, that like we like looked at each other and like just said, oh, this is what we should do. And I was just like, we didn't have a discussion about it. So it felt like it was just meant to be because it was both on of our hearts. But so that's how it came about. We were formed, we got our nonprofit status in 2024, but our goal is we like to break the foundation into four pillars. We raise awareness around two issues: necrotizing enterocolitis, which is the disease that primarily affects premature babies, and PPROM, preterm premature rupture of membranes. Because remember, I ruptured but stayed pregnant for 6 weeks. And we know families in those situations, depending on your job, your financial status, like you need a lot of support in those situations. And so we raise awareness around those two diagnoses and issues to help support families. But the way we directly support with other families is NICU and lost families, bereaved families. And so since our existence, we have partnered with the local hospital that Gabriela was born at, and we've provided care packages to NICU families to provide them with resources that they can reach out to, provide them with items such as like NICU books and NICU journals to document their baby's stats and how they're growing so they can better advocate for their baby. And then also reading to the baby because that helps in the NICU, along with like food gift cards and other items that help with their day-to-day. That's how we've directly helped NICU families. We've also donated items to the hospital's NICU to help support the baby, such as items like Mamaroo or scrapbooking materials so they can make crafts for the families. We've also helped the NICU nurses by providing them lunch and going there. And so we do that for the NICU's families, and then we're partnering with another local hospital, one that Gabriela passed up, to help support lost families, bereaved families. So actually, I just joined their bereaved family advisory council to give feedback on ways that they can better support families. And like us, we were kind of in that gap, and so how to avoid that. And then we are raising funds this year because we host a 5K in September, and we raise funds to support the families at both hospitals. And so we're going to use a portion of those funds to help support NICU families in Emory. And then we're going to use a portion of those funds to help support families at another local hospital who they've experienced loss. And so we just started in 2024, but in the last year, we've already made a big impact. We've helped at least 25 families at the local hospital, and we're hoping to just even do more as we grow. So, yeah.
Amazing, amazing. And that was definitely divine for you and your husband to both come to this, and y'all hadn't had any really prior conversation. It was like the spirit was really talking to both of you all, saying, hey, this is y'all's mission in honor of Gabriela. So I love that. And I love how you also have been incorporating her into everything you do, which is very hard because a lot of people don't know how to keep their memory of their child alive in everyday life, especially when they have their rainbow baby. But it seems like you all are going to keep it around, obviously with the foundation, but just in conversation as well. Because one thing that I have learned to love about my mom is she typically will tell people that she has 3 grandchildren, and then obviously she does not. She has my son, my rainbow baby, in the physical, but she'll always count those other 2 babies. And it always reminds me, because I don't always consciously do that, right? But she has made a concerted effort. Like, she's very intentional. When people ask her about her grandkids, she says that she has 2 in heaven and my son. So I love it too, because like it does, it's to what you do. Like, I don't always think of like, oh yeah, I do have 2 other babies,
Yeah.
because it's something that you think about, but you don't always, it doesn't always come off your lips naturally, like the one child that you physically are parenting here. So you've
Yes.
encouraged me to think
Well, no,
about.
I love that your mom does that. Both of our mothers do that, and I
Yes.
love them so much for it because I know it can be tough, but they're very intentional about
Very
including
intentional about it. It's
hers.
so
Yeah.
crazy. Like even signing
Shout
like
out to moms.
I know. Gosh, thank God for our mothers who cover us. And for mothers, like you said, have not experienced loss. I think this is my way, the way my mom parents me, has parented me through my losses, is honoring my babies this way because
Yeah.
she doesn't know that experience. So she's like, at the minimum, this is what I can do to show up to make sure she feels loved and like a mom, even though she has a physical child, but she's not going to miss these two babies she has in heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yes, absolutely. So where can we learn more about your organization, the walk that you're having? Share all the details with us.
Of course, of course. If you want to keep up with what the foundation is doing, you can find us on our at our website, GabrielaGraceFoundation.org. I'm going to spell it because I know how things go, but it's Gabriela Grace Grace, and then Foundation FOUNDATION.org. It is the same name on Instagram and Facebook. And then for our walk, we host a 5K in September. This year it'll be September 13th of 2025. We hosted it last year in September around to honor Gabriela's birthday, but that is under our wellness section of the foundation that's geared toward bringing community and families that have experienced these type of losses or a difficult NICU journey. And you can find more about that on our website, but also on our Instagram handle, project.gabriela. And so the 5K is put under that name, Project Gabriela. And yes, if you ever just want to know more, volunteer, reach out to us on socials, or you can contact us through the website. But we're just
And
looking.
this 5K is going to be in Atlanta.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry, yeah, if I didn't mention that. So we're based out of Georgia, Metro Atlanta, and the 5K is actually going to be hosted in the Metro Atlanta area.
Perfect. So, what encouraging words can you leave with our listeners, those who are on this journey to motherhood and definitely are looking to have a baby in 2025?
I know that the journey to motherhood can be unexpected, right? Like when everyone thinks of motherhood, you think everything's going to go according to plan, and when it doesn't go according to plan, your world is devastated. You feel crushed. I've been there. I know what that feels like. And in that moment, there may not feel like there is light at the end of the tunnel, but there is. I don't, and that light at the end of the tunnel can look different for everyone, right? It may not look the way it did for me and my family's journey, but there is light at the end of the tunnel in some way, shape, or form. So I just encourage you to hold on and to keep faith and have hope that eventually you will see that light.
Absolutely. So, where else can we keep in contact with you after this episode? So Project Gabriela for the organization. And then if people want to reach out to you, where can they find you, sis?
Yes, please. Well, I'm on social media like everybody else. um, as far as a social media that you can follow me on, it's at bookmarked by Tab, BOOKMARKED BYTAB. I started like a social media account focused on books in 2020. I've kind of like, I love reading, but with everything that's happened over the couple of years, that's been a little more silent, but you can still keep up with me there. Or if you ever want to reach out to me via email, have questions, want to connect, then you can email me at Tabitha, Tabitha, V, and Pazmino, Pazmino, at gmail.com.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Tabitha, for sharing your story and your light and honoring Gabriela in this way.
Thank you for honestly just having me here and giving me the opportunity to talk about her.
All right, we got you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes, go to sistersinloss.com. To stay connected with us and join the Sisters in Loss community and receive my weekly newsletter, please go to sistersinloss.com/newsletter. That is sistersinloss.com/newsletter. Please rate and review this episode, and I will talk to you next week.